What's going on, Tamers? It's me, East, the man who just wants to play his Galopmon deck, but right now the video backlog is just way too strong, so the content creator struggle in real time. Moving into the second week of the EX06 Infernal Ascension set for Japan and the rest of Asia, the World's Finals is over, which means the large-scale events that people were preparing for is also over. So now I'm really excited to see what people have been cooking up these past 2 weeks. Surprisingly though, not a ton of event results last week, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why. The one saving grace here is that we did get some really large-scale events in the forms of the side events for Worlds, as well as some really big community events that happened this past week. The Super Chamber Battle events that they had at Worlds was essentially just two 256-man brackets, and the following day they had the team event, which was just a huge 3-on-3 tournament. While elsewhere we had the Evolution Wars event going on, which was essentially a community-run 100-man tournament. With that said, let's take a look at some event results, a couple of key takeaways, and a close look at some of the decks that topped over the course of the past week. So diving into the results, I think if you take this at face value, it's a little bit misleading. What it seems like is that you have the 7 Great Demon Lords here just running the show right now, divided by the River Styx and then every other deck in the game. However, while Demon Lords does have a wide presence of tops among the events that are happening out there, it isn't winning the largest events that are out there. The events that I mentioned before, like Evolution Wars and the Super Chamber Battle events at the World Finals, were won by decks like the Armors, as well as Numamon and MirageGaogamon, surprisingly. If you've been following the Armors saga since these cards were released in the last set, BT16, then you know that Yellow Vaccine Armor was considered the strongest of the 3 decks for a while, but last week we started to see the trend of people going back to just raw Magnemon, and I'm still not sure why. Once I get a chance to go to my locals this week, I'd like to hit up some folks and ask why this is the case. Outside of 7 Great Demon Lords, it feels like the other decks which receive support in EX6 have struggled to find their footing, most notably Mastemon. However, that's all changed in this last week, but it took a Worlds caliber player to do it. While looking at this list, Mastemon only got a single win this past week. It was at one of the larger scale events that I mentioned before, the Evolution Wars event, which is about a 100-man tournament. That being said, stay tuned because we're definitely going to take a look at that deck in just a little bit. The first deck that we're going to take a closer look at today is going to be MirageGaogamon, a deck that in recent weeks has been on a small revival because of its useful removal, as well as its very strong offensive potential. The deck initially saw a huge decrease in use once Bandai restricted one of their most useful Digi-Egg cards in the Bukamon here, which gave your stack jamming so it could swing over and over without worrying about what Digimon's DP it checked into. But with some recent releases from BT16, as well as some fine-tuning in the deck, people are bringing this deck back to its former glory. We see the inclusion of the BT16 Galgamon here, who is initially a Grace Nova card, but he has jamming and inheritance with no strings attached, so you just get free jamming, and because he has Galgamon in the name, he's essentially searchable by the deck, which means he's really useful. Additionally, players have also started to lower the amount of Gomamon cards they have here in order to make room for Betamons from the BT15 set, I believe it is. The Betamon here just having jamming in its inheritance without strings attached either means that between level 3 and level 4 and the 1 copy of the allowed Bukamon in the deck, your stack is always going to have jamming. The other way this deck snakes some of the most popular decks in the meta right now is also through the use of the BT13 Mach Galgamon. This guy says that if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, his attack can't be redirected, which means decks like Tyrant Kabuterimon as well as the Magnemon X Antibody cannot redirect your attack and block. Outside of these small techs though, the deck really hasn't seen much of a change. You've got the 1 copy of the Ranamon here to finish off with one of your Tamers if your MirageGaogamon and the Burst Mode can't do the job. You've also got the 4-3 split on the Memory Boost and Training cards, as well as the 2 copies of the Full Moon Meteor Impact as for removal. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but this is the deck that actually won in my block for the 1v1 Super Chamber Battle event at the World Finals. First place, 256-man tournament, what more proof do you need? A lot of you in the comments have been asking in recent weeks' videos what Leomon looks like right now as a deck or how it's changed since EX6's release. And honestly, this is a pretty good example. The lower half of the deck looks pretty standard for a Leomon deck with some of the search cards in the Leodumon as well as the Luckymon. Some cheap Digivolves from some of the level 4s as well as the ability to Digivolve from trash using the new Mad Leomon from BT16. And then the level 5s that have the ability Fortitude, which means they'll come back if they have sources whenever they're destroyed. What really surprises me about this deck though is the top end, because it just feels so clean when you look at how the effects work out. You've got a couple copies of the Leopardmon X Antibody here to play a 7 cost or lower green Digimon. He's going to combo well with some of your Ace cards and things like the Mega Gargamon Ace as well as the new Cherubmon Ace from EX6. The Cherubmon Ace also allows you to play a Digimon and then give an opponent's Digimon minus DP for how many Digimon you have on the board. And this combos so well with the Leopardmon X Antibody because once you reduce DP with the Cherubmon Ace here, you can then resolve the rest of Leopardmon's effect to bounce stuff back to hand. You additionally have the option of going into one of your level 5 cards that are 7 cost as well, and then you can Digivolve the Rapidmon X Antibody over them. And if you manage to stack an X Antibody underneath that, You have a Digimon that has Armor Purge as well as Fortitude, which makes it incredibly sticky on board. I also love the cute little tech in this deck of the Ultimate Chaosmon, the one of. Because you have cards that are green, alongside cards that are yellow or in black, you have the ability to Jogress or DNA Digivolve with these guys to get to him to make some crazy comebacks. It really feels like once you get to the level 5s and higher for this deck, it becomes very, very sticky. It's hard to remove anything off the board completely. And even if you do that, in most cases you're going to have some nasty deletion effect from some of the level 4 cards that are going to disrupt your own game plan. The one thing that really scares me about this deck is that this guy runs 4 copies of Pomamon, a Digimon that doesn't allow you to play Digimon by effects. In a deck where on your opponent's turn you can pretty often play Digimon by an effects is really scary. I don't have the courage to run a card like this or this many copies of a card like this in a deck like this, considering I might be a floodgate for some of my own effects. And so finally, you Leomon stands looking for a list out here, definitely give this one a try. And so finally, as promised, we're going to take a look at the Mastemon deck that topped at the 100-man event here in Japan. What's really cool about the pilot of this deck though is that if you're familiar with the 2022 World Championships, this is the second place player, Misao Black. When you take a look at this build, it definitely feels like it was put together by a World's caliber player because some of the tech and ideas here are so smart. While I think that a lot of people initially tunneled into Mastemon as a focus for the deck, it seems like Misao here has used Mastemon with a splash of some of the cards like the MirageGaogamon here, as well as the Digimon from EX06 as a way to support the deck. The Digimon here allowing you to play an angel from your security and just give an opponent's Digimon minus 7k, as well as give the protection to all of your angel type cards whenever they would be removed from the field to just pop a security off and let them live, is really strong. Alongside him, you've got the MirageGaogamon here for disruption, as well as the ability to pseudo recover cards as well. Another cool Misao innovation here is the use of the Patamon card here. So using the BT13 Patamon, this guy is like enemy number 1 of the game right now, it feels like, as well as the movie promo Patamon here to search your security for 2 color yellow cards in the form of either Digimon or Tamers, in the case you find an array there as well. Combos really well with the Cody and TK Tamer from BT16. At the start of your main phase, you can just hard play a Patamon down here to either get the search effect or get the main phase effect from the BT13 Patamon to immediately Digivolve from security. And then once you do DNA Digivolve, you can rest the Cody and TK Tamer here to de-Digivolve something on your opponent's side of the board, and then use the Mastemon's effects to play something like the Lady Devimon here from EX6, who can pop a level 4 Digimon or lower. Looking at the level 5s, Misao doesn't actually use a lot of the new Anjumon or Lady Devimon cards introduced here. He's only got a single copy of the EX6 Lady Devimon, like I mentioned before, and only 2 copies of the EX6 Anjumon here, who has Barrier as well as the ability to give Security Attack -2 to something. And then on Inherited, she also gives Alliance. He instead opts to go back to some of the BT11 Anjumon cards here, being able to search security, as well as the Lady Devimon here, who can drop cards into the trash and then grab cards from the trash as well. And the rest of the level 5s are just padded out with the Anjumon Ace cards, as well as the Anjumon X Antibody for that nice extra bit of recovery and extra card draw. The rest of the top end for this deck, outside of the Digimon and the MirageGaogamon that we mentioned before, are just 2 copies of the Mastemon Ace and 3 copies of the original Mastemon from the starter deck. And while I think a lot of people have tried to fit in Ultimate Chaosmon in this deck, he has gone a much simpler route in just having 1 copy of the Ordinamon as well as 1 copy of the Shine Greymon Ruin Mode. I gotta be honest, after looking at this build, I'm really excited to update my own list and see how this one plays, and I hope that you folks out there who want to get your hands on this deck do the same. And so with that, we're gonna wrap up the second week of the EX6 Infernal Ascension set for Japan and the rest of Asia. Something I think is worth pointing out here is that during this time, the new Scramble cards and the promo Ace cards were made available, and I didn't really see many of those cards in any of the decks, so either they don't make a huge impact here, or the people are still trying out to see what works. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, personally I've been trying out the new Gallimon deck with the addition of the Red Scramble, as well as the new Megadramon Ace promo card, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. The deck definitely feels a little bit smoother, and with BT17 just around the corner, I'm super excited to try out the new support that the deck gets there. Anyways folks, I'm gonna get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.